Global tensions exploded when Barron Trump, the youngest son of former U.S. President Donald Trump, stunned the world at the World Youth Leadership Forum. The event, attended by leaders, activists, and visionaries from across the globe, took a dramatic turn as Barron, originally scheduled to speak on youth innovation, deviated from his script and directly confronted West African leader, President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. Standing tall behind the podium, with cameras rolling and dignitaries watching, Barron Trump spoke with an intensity that silenced the room. He addressed Traoré directly, saying, "Mr. Traoré, I have a question. How can you lecture the world on freedom when journalists vanish under your regime? How do you speak of youth empowerment while silencing student protests in Ouagadougou?" The room fell into a stunned silence. Even the moderators hesitated. No one had expected this. And no one was prepared for what came next. President Traoré, known for his calm composure and strategic mind, rose slowly from his seat and asked to respond. With quiet resolve, he addressed Barron and the audience. "Young man, I admire your courage, but not your understanding. Burkina Faso bleeds because of foreign interference. We fight not to silence voices, but to protect them from chaos planted by those who never wished for Africa to rise." The atmosphere shifted. There was a murmur in the room. Some nodded. Others watched Barron's face, searching for a reaction. Barron, unshaken, leaned forward and replied, "With respect, sir, that sounds like an excuse. A leader doesn't blame the past. He carves a new future. Your people are fleeing. Your economy is crumbling. And yet, you sit here draped in revolutionary language as if it were a shield." The audience was now fully engaged. Phones lit up as tweets and live streams exploded. The stage had transformed into a global battlefield of words, ideology, and truth. President Traoré stepped forward and spoke with unflinching clarity. "You want the truth, Barron? Here it is. When I took office, I inherited a land ravaged by corruption, foreign exploitation, and terror. The very nations that now lecture us about democracy once stripped us of our dignity. The war we fight is not just with guns, but with history." Applause erupted from the African delegations. Barron's expression shifted subtly. He was processing more than he had expected. Traoré continued, "You speak of the economy? We are building with our own hands what was destroyed by global interests. You speak of freedom? Where was that freedom when French troops occupied our land without our consent? When multinational companies drained our gold while our children starved?" Then Barron Trump delivered his final blow. "Are you suggesting that America, my father's administration included, is responsible for Burkina Faso's suffering?" The room gasped. Tension crackled in the air. President Traoré didn't flinch. He looked Barron in the eye and replied, "I'm saying this. America has the power to uplift or to oppress. Your father chose interests over integrity. And now, a new generation must choose differently." Barron opened his mouth to respond, but he didn't. His jaw tightened. His gaze lowered slightly. He slowly sat back down. And just like that, the debate was over. The confrontation went viral in minutes. Social media platforms exploded. Hashtags like #Barron vs. Traoré and #AfricaSpeaks trended across the globe. Pundits debated the clash endlessly. Some praised Barron for his fearless questioning. Others hailed Traoré for his unapologetic stand. What the world witnessed was more than just a heated exchange between two high-profile figures. It was a collision of worlds, privilege versus pain, legacy versus liberation. It was the raw, unscripted voice of a new generation challenging old powers. And it was the voice of a revolutionary leader refusing to back down. In the end, President Traoré didn't humiliate Barron Trump. He humbled him. And sometimes that's the greater victory. Barron Trump's private message to Ibrahim Traoré leaks. What he said will leave you speechless. The dust had barely settled. The confrontation between Barron Trump and Ibrahim Traoré had already been etched into the political consciousness of a generation. Headlines around the world carried the weight of that moment. Op-eds flooded every corner of the internet. And while the media obsessed over who won the confrontation, behind the scenes, something even more profound was happening. Unknown to the public at the time, Just hours after that fiery exchange, Barron Trump quietly left the conference venue. No security entourage. No press briefing. Just silence. Eyewitnesses later confirmed he had requested a private suite at the residence where Traoré was staying during the summit. The meeting was never announced. No cameras were allowed. No aides permitted. Only the two men, Barron and Traoré, alone, behind closed doors. 3 days later, an audio file surfaced online. The origin was unconfirmed, but experts verified the voices were authentic. The world leaned in. Everyone expected more fireworks. More clashes. But what they heard stunned them. Barron's voice was the first, no longer fiery, but calm. Vulnerable. President Traoré, he began, I've had time to think about what happened on stage. I want to be honest with you. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came because I thought I understood leadership. I thought I knew what justice looked like. But you showed me something I didn't expect. There was a pause. Then came Traoré's voice, measured, composed. Barron, you asked tough questions. You stood your ground. That takes courage. But leadership is not about victory. It's about responsibility. And if you truly want to lead someday, then you must learn to listen, especially when it's uncomfortable. What followed was a 35-minute conversation, raw, real, and riveting. Barron spoke about growing up in a golden tower while the rest of the world struggled. About watching his father polarize a nation and quietly wondering, even as a boy, whether power could ever truly serve peace. He admitted that, while he had memorized statistics about Burkina Faso's poverty, he had never once visited a place without electricity. That the confrontation on stage had been more than political, it had been personal. A test of identity. I came with arrogance, Barron said. But I left with questions I can't unask. Traoré responded with a lesson few leaders have ever had the grace to share. The West often thinks Africa is broken. But what you call broken, we call battle-tested. We are not your project. We are not your pity. We are your partners, if you let us be. Barron fell silent. Then, in a quiet, almost choked voice, he added, What you said about my father hurt. But it needed to. Because you weren't just talking to him. You were talking to everything he represents. The leaked audio ended with something no one expected, a handshake. Not in silence, but in mutual promise. If you ever come to Burkina Faso, Traoré said, I'll take you to the villages. Not the press tours, the real streets. Let you see what resilience really looks like. Barron responded, If you ever come to New York, I'll take you to the places politicians pretend don't exist. The neighborhoods my father never visited. Maybe then we can start a conversation this world actually needs. When the recording spread, reactions were as explosive as they were emotional. Conservative media tried to discredit it. Others praised Barron for doing what few in his family ever had, show humility. Across Africa, young people began using a new phrase online. Barron did the one thing the West never does, listen. In Burkina Faso, students began organizing virtual town halls, asking, what does youth diplomacy look like in the 21st century? Many credited the viral moment as a turning point in how young people saw global politics, not as a stage for ego, but as a platform for truth. But perhaps the most shocking outcome came 2 weeks later, when Barron Trump posted a photo on his newly launched Youth Futures social media channel. It was a simple black and white picture, him holding a letter. The caption read, To President Traoré, thank you. For challenging me. For humbling me. For showing me what leadership really looks like. At the bottom, a signature. Barron Trump, student of the world. That letter, verified and framed, now hangs inside a cultural center in Ouagadougou. Not as a symbol of defeat or dominance, but of dialogue. The young man who once charged onto a global stage with fury had left with wisdom. And the African leader who once defended his people with fire had passed on something even greater, perspective. In the end, the story wasn't about who clapped back harder. It wasn't about American pride or African revolution. It was about what happens when two radically different worlds collide, and instead of war, they choose to walk away with understanding. Barron Trump came to confront a president, but he left having met a teacher, and that left the entire world speechless. Just then Barron Trump makes a surprise visit to Burkina Faso. What happened at the airport shocked everyone. The world had just begun to digest the emotional aftermath of the leaked private conversation between Barron Trump and President Ibrahim Traoré. But no one, absolutely no one, was ready for what happened next. It was 8:17 a.m. in Ouagadougou when the control tower at Thomas Sankara International Airport received an encrypted message, VIP inbound. Unannounced. Clearance requested under U.S. diplomatic shield. Airport officials were stunned. Within minutes, the Burkinabe military was scrambled. The tarmac was cleared. Elite presidential security units rushed into position. Confusion surged. Speculation ignited. The media had no clue. The public had no idea. Only 3 people in Traoré's inner circle knew what was coming. And then, out of the scorching horizon, a private jet sliced through the sky and descended in a slow, haunting glide. Painted in deep gray, with no American insignia, it carried only one passenger, Barron Trump. He stepped off the aircraft dressed in full desert tan, wearing a white t-shirt with one bold phrase across the front. Listen first. The Burkinabe guards looked confused. The press was locked outside the perimeter. Whispers spread through the capital like wildfire. When Traoré was informed, he did not hesitate. He gave the order, let him through. But let the people see. And that's exactly what happened. Within an hour, the streets of Ouagadougou swarmed with people. Drones circled overhead. Live streams exploded across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Crowds surged along barricades. Children on rooftops. Elders in doorways. They didn't understand why the son of Donald Trump was here, but they knew history was happening. Then came the moment. Barron Trump and Ibrahim Traoré met face to face. Again. But this time, not on stage. Not behind microphones. On the dusty ground of a capital that had suffered, resisted, and risen. No handshakes. No cameras. Just raw tension. The air was thick. Barron leaned forward and said loudly enough for nearby cell phones to capture. You told me to come see the real Burkina Faso. I'm here. Show me. The crowd roared. Traoré stared at him for a long, cold second. Then he nodded once and said, "Then walk with me." And they did. No SUVs. No choppers. They walked side by side, through marketplaces scarred by poverty, through schools rebuilt after bombings, past memorial walls of fallen resistance fighters. People watched in disbelief. The son of America's most controversial president was now walking through a nation that had once been enslaved, exploited, and ignored by global powers. And he wasn't being attacked. He was being studied, tested, and slowly accepted. Then came the moment that broke the internet. As the sun began to set, they arrived at a village on the outskirts, one that had suffered the brunt of a deadly insurgent attack just 8 months prior. Over 50 people had died there. Most of them children. Their school had been destroyed. But the community had rebuilt, brick by brick. Without a word, Barron Trump knelt in front of the memorial wall. A wall with 53 names etched into it. He touched one name, Aisha, age 10, and whispered something that cameras barely caught. "I'm sorry we never knew you." Then, in a move no one expected, he removed a necklace from around his neck. It was a small silver cross, one reportedly given to him by Melania during his father's first campaign. He placed it at the foot of the wall. Silence. Then tears. Dozens of villagers, hardened by war and loss, began crying openly. Even Traoré looked away to gather himself. It was no longer politics. It was real. But just as the moment reached its emotional peak, the chaos erupted. An unknown figure broke through the crowd, sprinting full speed toward Barron with a sharp object. Screams tore through the air. Bodyguards surged. A single gunshot cracked, but missed. President Traoré himself intercepted the attacker. He tackled him to the ground in one clean, military-trained motion. Soldiers swarmed in. The attacker was subdued, revealed to be a foreign agent posing as a journalist. His motives? Unknown. But his target? Crystal clear. Barron Trump had come to see a new truth, and someone, somewhere, wanted to silence it. The incident only amplified the global storm. Every media outlet across the planet reported the story within hours. Barron Trump survives attempted assassination in Burkina Faso, trended for 72 hours straight. Both praise and outrage erupted worldwide. The U.S. State Department issued a formal statement, but it was Barron's personal post that broke the internet once more. I came to understand. I left with scars. But I'd rather be wounded by truth than protected by ignorance. The post received 38 million likes within 48 hours. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, Traoré made a nationally televised address. He didn't focus on the attacker. He didn't play the victim. Instead he said, "This is what leadership must become. Two young men, born into power, refusing to be prisoners of it. Barron Trump came here not to teach, but to learn. And in doing so, he reminded us that even the children of empires can choose humility." The United Nations issued a rare commendation for the unprecedented act of civilian diplomacy. International youth groups called it a model for 21st century leadership. But most importantly, millions of young Africans began asking a question they'd never dared before. If even Barron Trump can change, what can we do?